All right, let's start with a fact that sounds more like a riddle. Every single country on Earth is in debt. I'm talking about the United States, China, Germany, Japan, you name it, they all owe absolutely staggering sums of money. And, well, if every country on the planet owes money, and I mean everyone, from the world's biggest economies to the smallest islands, it kind of looks like the entire global balance sheet is written in red ink. The scale of this is it's almost impossible to get your head around. Total global debt has now blown past $315 trillion. To put that into perspective for you, that is nearly 3 times the size of the entire global economy. It's a number so huge, it almost feels fake. Which, of course, brings us right back to that central mystery.
Right? Who do we owe all this money to? Who's holding the IOU? Is there some secret intergalactic bank we're all indebted to? Well, to find the answer, we have to look at how the system itself is built.
You see, debt isn't just a burden that we all carry. It's the invisible architecture of our modern world. Seriously. Every war, every major crisis, every period of incredible growth, it's all built on a scaffolding of promises.
And this whole idea of national debt, it had to be invented. It was born out of pure necessity. Back in 1694, England was at war and was completely desperate for cash. So the king made this revolutionary deal with a group of merchants. He said, loan the crown money, and in return you'll get a permanent stream of interest, guaranteed by future taxes. And just like that, the first government bond was born, a tradable promise from the state, and it laid the foundation for all of modern finance. So that 300-year-old invention is now the absolute bedrock of the global economy. To unravel this whole paradox, let's start with its biggest user, the world's largest debtor, the United States. If we can follow the money here, it gives us a roadmap for the entire planet. Okay, so the first surprise is who actually owns America's debt. If we look at the part that's publicly traded, which is what you're seeing here, a full 2/3 of it is held by American investors. That means U.S. banks, pension funds, insurance companies, and even the Federal Reserve itself. Only about 1/3 is owned by foreign countries or investors. And when you dig into who those foreign holders are, the popular story just completely falls apart. Japan, not China, is the largest foreign holder of U.S. debt. In fact, despite all the headlines you hear, China owns only about 2% of the total. And this reveals the really crucial point. The whole system is basically a closed loop. The Treasury issues bonds, and American institutions, funded by American savings, buy them. The interest on those bonds is then paid for by, you guessed it, American taxpayers, and that money flows right back into those same pension funds and bank accounts. The U.S. isn't really beholden to some foreign power. It's locked in a financial cycle with itself. And this is where we need to zoom out, because that circular logic, it's not just an American thing. It's literally the blueprint for the entire global financial system. It's really like a planetary game of hot potato, but the potato is made of promises. Japan lends money to the U.S. The U.S. lends money to Europe through institutions like the IMF. Europe, in turn, lends to developing nations. And then those same nations lend money right back to the West by buying their government bonds. Everybody is holding someone else's IOU.
So who decides which of these promises are actually good? Well, the true power brokers are the markets themselves. We're talking about massive hedge funds, pension funds, and sovereign wealth funds that manage tens of trillions of dollars. They're the ones who decide which nations get to borrow cheaply and which ones will pay a huge premium just to stay afloat.
And at the very top of this pyramid, you've got the central banks, like the U.S. Federal Reserve. They are the ultimate market makers. They don't just manage debt, they literally manufacture money by buying government bonds. This process, you might have heard of it, it's called quantitative easing, injects new currency into the system. It means that nearly every single dollar is created with a corresponding piece of debt attached to it. And that brings us to the most counterintuitive, maybe brain-breaking truth of this entire system. It's the secret that allows this giant wheel to just keep on spinning. See, when you or I take out a loan for a car or a house, the goal is to pay it all back, the principal and the interest, and get that balance down to zero. But governments, they don't work that way at all. Their goal is just to keep refinancing, issuing new bonds to pay off the old ones. It's like a subscription they never, ever cancel. Now, this isn't some flaw in the system. It is the system. The whole thing runs not on repayment, but on confidence. As long as investors believe governments will keep paying the interest, the machine just keeps turning. So why don't governments just pay off all their debts? Honestly, because the world economy would probably collapse. Government bonds, especially U.S. Treasury bonds, are treated as the safest financial asset on Earth. Pension funds rely on them, banks use them as collateral, and entire countries hold them in their reserves. If you suddenly removed the world's most trusted financial instrument, it would trigger an unbelievable crisis. So instead, governments just keep issuing more debt. This continuous cycle becomes a kind of heartbeat for the global economy, pulsing through every pension, mortgage, and stock market on the planet.
But this perpetual motion machine, it isn't without its costs. This system, built on a foundation of infinite trust, has some very real and sometimes very painful consequences when that trust starts to crack.
And when that confidence breaks, the fallout is devastating. In Greece, a debt crisis led to years of crippling austerity. Argentina has faced repeated defaults, turning its national debt into a national curse. And in Sri Lanka, the inability to service foreign loans led to fuel shortages and a total economic collapse.
And there's another, more subtle cost. The interest payments on all this debt don't flow to everyone equally. Think about it. Governments collect taxes from the general population, from workers, to pay the interest on their bonds. But who owns most of those bonds? Well, it's pension funds, big corporations, and wealthy individuals. So what you have is a steady, upward transfer of wealth from labor to capital.
This is the engine behind what you're seeing here. As global debt levels climb, inequality almost always rises right alongside them. The system is just designed in a way that rewards those who already own assets and taxes the income of those who don't. The very mechanism that keeps the economy stable also systematically widens the gap between the rich and everyone else.
So in the end, the creditor isn't a foreign power or some shadowy banker. The creditor is the system itself. We owe the money to ourselves in a complex, circular, and deeply unequal loop that powers the entire modern world. Debt is the promise that holds it all together, which leaves us with one final and pretty crucial question. What happens when the promises just get too big to keep?